This is In Center Ring. I'm your host, Jonathan Lee Iverson. A woman of endless talent, she's lived many splendid lives. Now the best-selling author and advocate is on a mission to teach us all to try to remember and never forget. In Center Ring presents Sandra Scheller. Say, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, Sandra Scheller, a woman of many talents. And, you know, you've become truly a dynamic advocate for, of course, the late, great Ruth Sachs, and, of course, Holocaust survivors all over the place. But what we want to start out with is Sandra Scheller, the artist. You're a designer. You learned your chops from your mother. You're a dancer. You're a photographer. And of course, you're an award-winning mime.
Yeah.
Now, this is something else. Like
back in 1976.
But a two-time award-winning top female mime award at the National Mime Festival, 1975 and 1976. And listen, this wasn't like, you know, the street mime somewhere. You were featured on Sesame Street. You were featured on Reading Rainbow. I mean, those are iconic programs. I remember them when I was a kid.
I got another one for you. I used to teach in San Diego at a place called San Diego Junior Theater.
Okay.
And one of my students, our students, was Brian Stokes Mitchell.
Yes, I remember you speaking of that. Now, how awesome is that?
Mm-hmm. And just the other day, I saw him singing out of his window from Man of La Mancha.
Isn't that one? And he's so wonderful. You had a hand in someone producing Brian Stokes Mitchell, really one of the
most beautiful skin. Oh my God, his skin was flawless. That's how I remember him. San Diego is a cool place, and especially imagine you're at the School of Creative and Performing Arts in Chula, Vista, 5 miles from the Mexican border, north of the Mexican border.
Your TEDx Chula Vista talk. Keeping memories alive is so moving. It's so dynamic because in that talk, of course, you're giving audiences an inside look into the journey of your beloved mother, Ruth. But also for me, you're giving us an inside look into a daughter coming of age and really coming to that part of your mother's humanity, something that she went through that was horrifically traumatic. That really wasn't discussed initially. Mm-hmm. And you're 6 years old and you hear a scream.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night. And what happens?
Oh, whoa. Okay. I hear a scream in the middle of the night. And so I thought, why would my mom be screaming? I mean, my mom never cried. So why would my mom be screaming? I run in the room. And there's my father trying to calm my mother down. And being a father figure, he's like, we'll talk about it in the morning. Everything is fine. Did somebody break through a window? Did somebody break through the attic? I mean, what could possibly happen that somebody is screaming? Did, God forbid, my father hit my mom, which I had never seen? You know, so what would make her scream? And then the next morning, he was explaining to me what the Holocaust was, and that my mother thought that somebody was trying to kill her again. And so I didn't understand it. There were a lot of things in our family, Jonathan, that I found out the hard way. Like, you didn't tell me this and you didn't tell me that. And let's say, had she not had that scream, would I have ever known that my mother was a Holocaust survivor? But it's interesting because my grandfather had the tattoo. My mother didn't have a tattoo because she was in Auschwitz for a short period of time with my grandmother. My grandfather was separated from, and I really didn't think much about it except that growing up in Chula Vista, our family was just different than the typical family that grew up here. I remember one day I found an abandoned Christmas tree, a blue Christmas tree. And I remember I brought it home and I couldn't sit down for 2 weeks. because my father was like, that tree is not coming in the house, and it was like, oh my gosh, but it's a Christmas tree. How do you explain this? Were they the best at explaining? No, they weren't. But as I started to find things out, boy, it was pretty crazy. When my father passed away, my mom became my best friend, somebody I never really knew. And I could talk to her about everything, but it was a 5-letter word that got my mother and me close, and that was trust. There was a trust issue. And I think the fact that she knew now that she could talk about it, and I was, for 5 years, I was able to ask her everything and anything. And
you said she actually remembered life as early as 3 years old.
Playing with a black German Shepherd dog, and she thought that all big German Shepherd dogs were Jewish. And she did something. I was constantly recording her. I mean, I've got like 1,600 videos of her. And when I did that, she knew about some of them she didn't, but I was constantly recording her. And little by little, as she started to do more talks, and remember, we had something, I think I should be on a show called Strange Inheritance, because we had the dress that my grandmother wore, which is what the cover of the book is about.
Yes.
Imagine having a dress that is given to you. What are you going to do with it? Do I dare say to my kids, it's your responsibility to take care of this dress? Do I do what I can to build a Holocaust museum, exhibit, and try to find a place for it so that my kids can visit it, but they're not responsible for it? Or if God forbid something happens to me, it goes to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, or it goes to the USC Shoah Foundation, and Dr. Smith can figure out what it needs to do. I don't want to burden my kids. They have to have their own life. And the last 5 years of my mother's life, it's something I was not prepared for.
In your TED Talk, you spoke of very eloquently how the more she spoke, the stronger she got. And so
on Percocets. And can you imagine that right after my father died, I took the Percocet and flushed them down the toilet. And I thought, you don't eat this. You're in a wheelchair. You're going to have to get pushed around. You're going to have somebody take care of you. You're no longer that bird taking care of the papa bird. You have to let people take care of you. When she realized that, she had that void. And for her, I mean, at the assisted living where she was at, she was the first to take the shower by 5:30 in the morning, and dressed and fed and ready to hit the doors by 7:30 in the morning, because she had school talks that started at 8:30 to 9 o'clock. And the adrenaline that she got, and the flowers that she got, and the boxes of candy that she got. And we were not even talking about what happened in San Diego. We're just talking about the South Bay of Chula Vista. Sure, once in a while we ended up doing other things, but that is what she lived for, to remind students she got rid of the fear. There was no more fear to talk about the Holocaust.
I very much love the fact, and this is going on what you were talking about regarding your grandmother's dress, that piece of history from the Holocaust, that dress that's marked, that so many victims wore. And you say very clearly and very powerfully in the TED Talk, we have a responsibility that we never forget. You pointed to the audience and you told them that. And I just thought that was so stirring, especially now in a time we're living in where everything is so polarized. And we're seeing things, history, it's always repeating itself. And we're seeing so much tension, racial strife, all of these things. And, I think you have one camp that is always trying to remind those who are always shocked. Oh, who always say, I can't believe we're in 2020. Is this 2020? Or, is this America? But the reality is we have to have a responsibility to try to remember.
Imagine if nobody talked about the Armenian genocide, what's going on in Rwanda, what's happening in the world. The fact that these are things that I had to learn to really understand, not just the Holocaust of my mom, but other people's suffering, because it's bad, it's worldly, it's not just, oh, this is just me and that's it. And I hate to use the word enjoy, but to be able to, it was like a pill wanting to know about other people's genocides. And if I help only one person, then the book did what it was supposed to do. If I can help one person, same thing when I started building masks. I mean, I'm up to like 3,500 masks that I've given away. If it helps one person, then I did something right.
Well,
just
truly,
did something.
I think your book is obviously going to do much more than help one person. I mean, in my opinion, you've started a movement. It's award-winning. It's not just a book, it's also a documentary. You've won wonderful awards in regards to the documentary, and you've won literacy awards as well. And I mean, obviously you didn't write it for that. You really wrote it to preserve this history, to really, in my opinion, I call you an apostle for your mother and her story and the stories of people like her. I love this initiative, this exhibition that you put together. You're the curator of Ruth, Remember Us The Holocaust. And it's featured. It's featured at the Chula Vista Public Library.
Correct.
At the Chula Vista Heritage Museum. Is that correct?
That's correct. When I moved to Chula Vista, when I came back, the fact that in a 3-year period, we got a book off the ground. We did a documentary with the same name that puts everything together. And now I have a Holocaust exhibit.
Anybody out there who's, you're up in arms about, oh, I can't leave my home because, and
we have a home.
Right. You just think of, here it is, the Nazis come in, occupy central Czechoslovakia. Is that correct? She's 11 years old, and her whole family, everything turns upside down.
And the people that you trusted, the wonderful, sweet supervisor that my grandfather absolutely adored, his boss, is wearing a swastika.
Stunning. And she went through 3 concentration camps, is that correct?
3 concentration camps. She started out in Theresienstadt, and she went to Auschwitz, went to Oderon, and then on April 11th was in a transport that went back to Theresienstadt that turned out to be the liberation camp. Wait, it gets even better, Jonathan. I don't know if you know this, okay? While doing the talks, I talked about this woman, Gertrude Heise. She was the Nazi guard that almost killed my grandmother, cocked a gun and tried to shoot my grandmother because she thought she heard my grandmother speaking. Okay, out of turn. Somebody on Facebook gets a hold of me who's a reporter. His name is Ingo Grossman. So Ingo, if you're watching, hi, buddy. And he's a reporter and he goes after war criminals. Gertrude is still alive. 97 or 98 years old, apparently has Alzheimer's. Her children never knew anything. And I went to my mom. Now, I found this out on December 1st. And I went to my mom and I'm like, Mom, you keep talking about Gertrude Heise, this Nazi woman who tried to kill Erna. My mother remembered how she ripped off her clothes and changed out of her backpack and started running. Now, she did get caught and did 10 years, but apparently after doing all the Nazi criminal men, they're going after the women. Gertrude apparently is still alive as of, from what I know, okay? So when I went to Ingo came to me and he goes, tell me, what does your mother know? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the old video camera to my mom. I'm like, Mom, start talking. And my mother was able to recall everything about this woman, as painful as it was. And after we shut the video off, my mother just sat there and she said to me, I miss my mom,
Mm.
and I miss my dad, and I miss Kurt. And I just miss him so much after talking about this woman. My mom maybe was the nail that went into the coffin for this woman to her fate. And I said to my mom, and I started recording again, I said, Mom, what do you want to have happen to Gertrude? She said they shouldn't even waste their time. She's 98 years old. Well,
Mm.
what are you going to do? Put her in jail? Cause people money? Why? Why do I want to be the one to do that? I hope she lives to be 200 years old. Why would you want that, Mom? So she can remember every day what she did to us. Okay. So my mom knew, well, Mom, do you have a message for Gertrude? And my mom said, I want her to know I have a wonderful family. I have 4 grandkids, 2 children. I speak to kids about the Holocaust, and I will do everything in my power to make sure this never happens again. In 1 year, okay, so in 1 year, we got the Multicultural Motion Picture Book Award, the Gail McCandless Award. She was nominated, no, she got the Mother of the Year from Senator Ben Hueso.
Mm.
Numerous proclamations from the mayor and from city council and from county supervisors. She did her bas mitzvah, which is something you do when you're 13. She did it because at the time that she was 13, it was the hardest thing for her because it was between her and God.
Mm.
And her party was so cool. And to be able to see that she just, it wasn't the award, it was the fact of the gathering. She was also, she got something called Woman of Valor, where they did a play about my mom. And they recalled her
Play
life.
about her. They
Yeah.
did a play about her.
Yeah, it's a talk where the woman comes out and she says, I am Ruth Sachs. And she did a whole thing. It's called Woman of Valor. Yeah.
How wonderful.
Yeah. And I will tell you that just before I left to go to Las Vegas on the 18th of December, there was my mom and myself and the head librarian at the Chula Vista Public Library, Joy Watley, talking about what we were going to put in the exhibit. What exactly were we going to do? My mother and I had spent hours and months figuring out how do we want to lay out the 16 cases. So it's almost like she was at peace with everything. But the one thing she didn't get to see was the last 6 minutes of the documentary, the final part of the documentary, and the fact that she didn't get to see the exhibit. So when we had the opening of the exhibit, mind you, this is a year later, it was so magical because at first it's like, oh, we have this fundraiser that we're doing, and we were lucky if we had like 5 people and then 6 people. And I was just like, oh my God, are we even going to make this work? But as I started talking to people that I hadn't seen for 50 years and 55 years in the Jewish community and saying, you know, we're not doing a big fancy schmancy dinner. We're doing this brunch with the 5 Holocaust survivors that are on. We had 230 people and people coming from all over. And it was like one big party for Ruth. So what I did was when it was time to speak, right, my cell phone went off. I had somebody call my cell phone. And basically my talk went like this. Well, hi, Mom. Yeah, everybody's in the audience. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. Everybody, my mom says she loves you. You should have seen everybody. They were just like, Goosebumps. It was short, sweet, to the point, because what else am I going to say?
As you would find out things bit by bit, you know, just to see her, I guess, come out of her shell, to see her in her everyday life, how she wasn't necessarily hamstrung by what she had lived through.
I want to know what she forgot to tell me. I want to know if who are all these people in photographs that never got marked? What are their stories? Some of them, one in particular, they had to dig their own ditch with their children, and then they were shot into the ditch in Zamość. I talk about it in the book. And just having to live with that. You're a teenager and you find out that your grandfather, your father's uncles just ended their life because of Nazis.
I would be curious to know if Ruthie was here with us, what she would say to those who are handling this new change, this brand new world we're in, what she would say to them about coping and overcoming in this world we live now.
I would think that Ruthie would say, don't feel sorry for yourself. I am blessed for our government that we have in Chula Vista, our mayor. I don't know if you knew, but our city councilman almost died, Steve Padilla, from corona. And when that hit, he was on a ventilator for the longest time. This was real. This is real. And yes, we're talking about politicians, and we're not talking about them because we're talking what is real. This is not made up. Wash your hands in soap. Make sure you go in between your fingers. Try not to touch your face if you can help it. And just be thankful. But take care of your soul. Take care of yourself. A lot of times when you're depressed, it'll take you down. Don't let that happen. I really believe that's what Ruthie would say. Take care of yourself. Treat yourself.
Thank you so much, my friend.
All right. I love you.
I love you more.